My name is Dr. Rosalind Gregory Bass. I'm the National President of the National Association of Medical Minority Educators. And tonight we will be featuring a discussion on the steps to increasing diversity of the physician assistant workforce, promising pathways. Tonight we will have a pre-recorded webinar with a live Q&A from our esteemed panelists from the Primary Care Physician Assistant Program at the Keck School of Medicine at the University of Southern California. We at the National Association of Medical Minority Educators are broken up into different regions. And so tonight, our Western region, which is representative of many different states, including Alaska, Arizona, California, Colorado, Hawaii, Idaho, Montana, Nevada, New Mexico, Oregon, Utah, Wyoming, and Washington State, all have come together in terms of making sure that tonight they will be our primary leads for tonight's Ask NAMME session. This region is led by Dr. Winona Lee, who is faculty at the University of Hawaii John A. Burns School of Medicine. And so sit back, relax, enjoy tonight's live, or I should say previously recorded webinar, and I hope that tonight's Q&A will enlighten you about the field, as well as inspire those of you who are looking for opportunities to becoming a physician assistant. With that being said, I turn it over to the Western region. Thank you.
Thank you for joining our presentation. 7 Steps to Increasing Diversity in the PA Applicant Pool. Our presenters today are faculty members of the Primary Care Physician Assistant Program from the Keck School of Medicine of the University of Southern California. My name is Lily Hudson. I'm joined by Maria Maldonado, Daryl Mayo, Janice Trammell, Dr. Vallejo, and Dr. Lohenry. Our presenters have no disclosures. Our learning objectives: delineate the requisite minimal support needed from university administration and leadership to implement a pipeline program. Describe 7 key steps in implementing a successful health professions pipeline program that increases minority admissions to PA programs. Articulate strategies to mitigate challenges to increasing PA program applicant diversity. 7 steps to increasing diversity in the PA applicant pool. Step number 1, empower. And now we will hear a word from Dr. Kevin Lohenry, Associate Dean of Graduate Student Affairs, Director, Division of Physician Assistant Studies at USC.
Diversity, equity, inclusion. The evolution of these words highlight the continued need for change in our society. As leaders, how do we empower our teams, our students, to help us solve the diversity, equity, and inclusion crisis in our institutions, in our hospitals, in our research facilities, in our PA programs, and in our communities? How do we tap into the energy, enthusiasm, and innovative ideas that our teams and our students have inside of them to help us solve this problem once and for all? Today, you will hear from our team at the Keck School of Medicine of USC. Our team will share 7 simple steps that can help enhance your diversity. This work will impact your diversity and the diversity of others in our profession, but only if you commit to it as a team. This is not a passion to be shared by a single individual, but a commitment to be shared by your entire organization. So back to empowerment. To truly empower a team to succeed, it starts with our collective commitment. our language, our message, our curiosity. It continues with words and actions that demonstrate a commitment to diversity. It is further emboldened by continued humility and learning, and will be successful by the endurance we all commit to as if we are running a marathon together. If the pandemic has shown us anything, it is the criticality of doing this work now so that we may change the paradigm of health disparities in this nation. Develop a shared vision with your team and administration. Find consensus. Identify funding streams to help make this work grow. Involve your students as they have a passion and energy that will contribute to your success. Clarify roles and expectations for your team and give them the freedom to run with it by removing barriers and serving them in this important work. In the end, the enrichment you and your entire team will experience with increased diversity in the classroom will make your love of PA education quadruple overnight.
Thank you, Dr. Lohenry. 7 steps to increasing diversity in the PA applicant pool. Step number 1, believe. Of all the forms of inequality, injustice in healthcare is the most shocking and inhumane. Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr. The foundation upon which the PA profession was created remains to be a need and true. To improve and expand the access to primary care services for all. Diversity matters to increase the number of underrepresented minorities in the PA profession. If so, we can potentially increase the number of primary care PAs working in medically underserved communities. Then, we can potentially decrease health disparities. And with that, we can potentially decrease the future impact of such conditions like COVID-19 in underserved communities. We are living in unprecedented times. The projected population expansion by 2050 and the increase of minority communities tells us that there is still more work to be done. But we believe there is hope. The new ARC-PA diversity standard shall serve as the catalyst to move us forward. We refuse to believe that the Bank of Justice is bankrupt. We refuse to believe that there are insufficient funds in the great vaults of opportunity of this nation. So we've come to cash this check, a check that will give us upon demand the riches of freedom and the security of justice for all. Dr. Martin Luther King. And now we will learn more from Mrs. Janice Trammell with Build.
Thank you, Lily, for sharing your perspective and also those statistics which can be alarming. Build. Let's talk about building your own diversity program. Not only building, but maintaining a program that will have longevity. Before you start to create and build, it is important to know where you are starting from, not only from who you are as a program, your why, but to explore and build on what currently exists. When I reflect on our history of diversity programs as an example, from our program's inception in 1972 through 1979, there was little need for targeted recruitment because we had a natural pool of diverse second and third career candidates. Then, as the number of programs increased and shifted to a more academic focus, the natural pool we relied on became less diverse, and we began developing our minority recruitment efforts through state funding with the Health Careers Opportunity Program, spearheaded by Les Howard and Jack Liskin. Underrepresented minorities also became a funding priority with the HHS PA training grants, and many programs began actively involved in minority recruitment. As federal grant funding priorities shifted and the underrepresented minorities no longer a priority, minority recruitment efforts were dropped by many programs. However, we continue to build our pipeline programs because of our collective commitment to our why, and we're able to obtain institutional support and state of California funding. When we became a bachelor's program at USC, our applicant pool was affected because now USC had different admission standards and we had to further develop our applicant pool. It took time to rebuild, find, and prepare candidates to meet the new admission standards, causing our recruitment efforts to not only seek underrepresented minorities, but to also begin a pre-PA project designed for retention of those candidates that were admitted. In 2001, when we made a decision to create a master's level program, again, our applicant recruitment efforts had to be refocused. Throughout these years, our commitment to maintain a diverse student body has been a sustained focus of also preparing our pre-PA applicants to be competitive candidates, not only at our program, but at other programs where their profiles would match. Our continuing efforts have always been outreach to underrepresented, disadvantaged students. And now with the RPA creating diversity and inclusion as a new standard, we are well positioned because of our continuing mission efforts and commitment to diversity. The two founding historical figures in our diversity and inclusion building mechanism, Les Howard as a witness and participant who has been there from the beginning and continues to be committed to diversity and inclusion work, and also Larry Rosen, who was an older adult at age 57 when admitted to our program in 1994, are examples of holistic mechanisms. The background shows a Chapman University hosted event and speaks to the focus of institutions working together for the common goal of demonstrating diversity in the workforce. In building your program initially, it is really best practice to clarify what diversity means to you, and is that definition in alignment with your institution, because you will need their support to have a sustaining program. Your definition of diversity should be clearly specified, not abbreviated. As an example, in a recent presentation on diversity, I heard the term BIPOC, B-I-P-O-C, and did not understand what it meant. And in researching, I came to understand the term can be confusing for some and misinterpreted. Instead of Black, Indigenous, and Indigenous and people of color, the interpretation could be bisexual people of color. One perspective of the intention of BIPOC is that it was intended to include the narrative of voices not always heard. Another perspective is that it is a lazy way to lump everyone together as if we all face the same problems. Actually, to conflate means to erase unique identities. It is important to take time to learn and to show you know the differences in your target groups. As you create and build your pool, keep it simple so that your target audiences will readily know they are included. To be inclusive means I need to see someone like me. So before you pick up that shovel, Ms. Maria Maldonado will talk with you about additional points to discover and explore. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Trammell. Lots of thought and self-discovery goes into the creation of a diversity building mechanism. Consider starting by exploring your institutions and programs' history, initiatives, and stance on issues of diversity, equity, and inclusion from 5 years ago, 10 years ago, or beyond. Do a needs assessment, take an inventory, do a gap analysis. We advise that you connect with different departments on your campus, such as admissions, outreach, recruitment, pipeline, other schools within your institution, those hosting summer bridge programs, Office of Diversity and Equity, Office of Civic Engagement, if those exist on your campus. In a world with limited resources and time, such as now, this is where partnerships and the spirit of iteration will serve us well in continuing or beginning to create a diversity building mechanism. Search around for recent mandates or initiatives around diversity, equity, and inclusion on your campus. This may increase your chances of funding, partnerships, support, co-messaging, and co-building, because we can't do this work all alone. On our PA program, we continue to build our diversity building mechanism. We picked up where prior efforts left off in 2013. We followed the above steps. We then moved to break ground by accepting invitations to various speaking events at colleges, high schools, career days, and the networking just took off. We received various invitations to connect with community organizations such as the Boys and Girls Club, all while remaining open to feedback and iteration. This helps us inform the ongoing process of building, because the building never ends. When you are ready to pick up a shovel and break ground, we suggest you reference the PAEA Diversity and Equity Inclusion Toolkit, which can be accessed through the PAEA Learning Hub. What they say about if you build it, they will come is partially true. Let's talk about messaging. So to whom are you speaking, and in what language, at what reading or grade level? Also, does your target message come across straight from your diversity building mechanism in terms of your mission, your vision, your goals? Is that alignment there? Is there a specific focus or objective? And how are you messaging? Are you knocking on doors? Are you attending speaking engagements? Are you seeking out speaking opportunities within your institution or at community events, perhaps at local kindergarten through 12th grade schools and colleges? Do the pictures on those flyers or testimonials and videos, do they represent your target audience? Is the viewer connecting to your message? Test it out. Let's see how it's being perceived. You can either do an informal or formal focus group within your organization, or go and ask your partner organizations. Report back what you intend to convey in your messaging, and do they think it aligns? Ask, does your target population feel welcomed and invited? Do they see themselves there at your program? Pipeline it. When we say pipelining, we're referring to starting where you are, starting somewhere, doing what you can with what you have at that moment, and keeping an iterative process, an open mind, and never lose hope. We find that this helps guard against stagnation and helps inform the process as we are trying to meet the needs of the target audience. It helps clarify misperceptions and pass along mentorship on all levels.
This is a wonderful opportunity to be part of this great team here at USC and be able to demonstrate the 7 steps of how to increase diversity in PA education. Part of my segment here is continuing on with the messaging. If you notice here at the end of this slide here, it says, are you believable? That's where I come in. That's where my contribution is. As you go to the next slide here, this is one of those slides that resonates with me, because if you look at it, you have equity right in the middle, you have equality, you have justice. For a long time, I did not understand the difference between equality and equity. I thought they were the same. Equality means everyone benefits from the same supports. I thought equality was you treat everybody equal. Equity is everybody gets the support they need to be at the same playing field. Now, neither one of those are you treat everybody equal, but at the end there, justice is you treat everybody equal. When there's an equality, you need to address it. So where I come, if you remember the previous slide, can your message come across as you're relatable? Well, I always come across, I've never, until more recently in the last 5 or 10 years, I've always been really reserved of where I have come from. And to share a little story with you is I came to this country as an immigrant. My parents, did the whole crossing. I came with them, and English was my second language, and I actually learned English at school. And it wasn't until I got out of the neighborhood that I grew up that I realized that I actually had an accent. So here I am coming out of school, going to outside communities, and somebody telling me I have an accent. That is the first sign that I'm like, wait a minute, I was raised in this country. I did not realize I had an accent, and now I'm at college, and someone is providing EOP program for me. And the EOP program was such a wonderful opportunity, but then someone of my same race and color tells me, you take advantage of EOP, they're gonna use that against you. So now I'm thinking, well, wait a minute, what are you saying, right? So now if you look back at the slide and it says equity, supports, provide support that they need to have that equal playing field. That's what EOP programs did for me. Now, here at USC, we have a pipeline program. And the pipeline program actually helps provide a lot of the tools that our kids don't get at schools because the funding's not there, because sometimes it's just that part of that education is just not important because now you have all these other things you have to worry. When I was growing up, it was just get to your classes, pass your classes, and now that's it. But what about all the support that you needed? I didn't have that at home. Both of my parents were working. And that is what I mean by the messaging. If you remember that last slide, if I go right back to it, are you believable? Are you basically relatable? I have my kids sitting in the audience, and a lot of the kids will sit in the back, and they at first will be like, who's this guy? Or what is he saying? And when they start to hear my story, you see them get up in their seat. And now they feel like, okay, I get it. He is, relatable to us. I do believe him. The stories he's saying are from down the street in the neighborhood. I mean, I grew up down the street from the same place that we're doing pipeline. So my message here is that I hope that when my students, or my kids, I call them, see me, that I can provide a relatable message to them. And also hopefully provide a mentor motivation for them to get to where they need to and have the right tools to be able to succeed. Thank you.
So tell the story. Think about your narrative. Think about what story you are telling. Think about how you're presenting and what you're presenting in your presentations when you are invited, what your slides say, your brochures. So if you're trying to be inclusive in marketing, what are your brochures showing? Look at the pictures, look at the wording, look at the smiles, or look at the people that are not smiling. Look at the flyers, look at your websites. As you begin to build and iterate, as you include more participants from varying experiences and walks of life and identity groups, inclusivity and diversity will grow. You are now on your way to creating a collective and inclusive story. You can listen for feedback from those who hear your story and identify what and who may still be missing.
Thank you, Ms. Maldonado. So the next step to increasing diversity in the PA applicant pool will be to connect with the community. I'm old school and I believe in the grassroots efforts. So I personally have gone into the college campuses. I've gone onto the high school campuses, meeting with teachers, meeting with the leadership of student organizations, meeting with counselors and sharing with them the information that we have regarding our PA pipeline program. Connecting with the community is something that I think is really, really important. Unfortunately, we're living in a time where we can't do it the way we used to do it. We are in the middle of this pandemic crisis right now, and so we can't be stopped, but we still need to press on. And one way to do that would be to utilize our electronic transmission. We can still hand out flyers through email. We can still reach these potential applicants by way of social media. I believe really appreciating the Zoom platform that we now have, we can reach a larger audience. We can do this in maybe even a more efficient way if we utilize this platform correctly. So again, connecting with the community is extremely important if we want to be successful with, again, making this pipeline work for us. Connecting the community by way of faith-based organizations, spiritual organizations is yet another way that we can reach all levels of individuals across the educational process. I believe that, again, this is a more concentrated approach when targeting one's system of belief. I just think it's a great venue to utilize and expose individuals to this great PA profession. The next step to increasing diversity in the PA applicant pool would be to recruit. And so you may ask the question, well, when should I begin this recruitment process? Well, I think the picture speaks volumes to that question. My answer to the question would simply be, you need to start early. As you can see in the photo, starting at the elementary school level is a good time to start. Typically, kids are asked the question, what do you want to be when you grow up? And what are the 4 choices? Policeman, fireman, doctor, lawyer. I think starting early is a great way to expose the youth to this amazing physician assistant profession. And so starting early is a great way to recruit. We also need to understand and appreciate the fact that if we wait too late, oftentimes with individuals, especially those that are coming from underserved backgrounds, those that have been not in a good position and having the ills of living under those social determinants that are not positive. Oftentimes they reach a certain level and they end up having to repeat courses. And so they waste time trying to get their GPA up to a level to where they are a competitive applicant. Unfortunately, a lot of time is wasted. So I think the earlier you can start recruitment, the better. Not only do we want to recruit early, but we also want to have that holistic approach to recruitment. I think that, again, we don't want to limit ourselves. We want to recruit and appreciate the educational arena, but we want to expand our horizons, think outside of the box. We need to recruit across different professions. Oftentimes, I might be in a conversation with a contractor who knows nothing about medicine, but that contractor may have a daughter or son or cousin or niece or nephew that is interested in the health profession. Even though he may be business, we need to go across these professional lines to, again, have that a holistic approach to our recruitment process be in full effect. And again, extending it even further than that, getting out into the community, you can literally be in the grocery store, starting up a conversation, and you would not be surprised to know that oftentimes careers are birthed out of these conversations, even in a grocery store. So again, I think having that holistic approach to the recruitment process is extremely important.
Thanks, Daryl. And as Daryl was mentioning, if you're out and about, again, with holistic recruitment, keep in mind you have the opportunity to recruit. If you're ever invited somewhere, it's an opportunity to recruit. You can recruit at various sites, locations, venues, and again, across professional lines. Be aware of looking for ideal kind of like checklist type of candidates or those who have already identified as pre-health. Look out for anyone trying to just better themselves, anyone with kids or with a family or just simply doing community work. Schedule a meeting and maybe do a meet and greet, whether it's another organization at their site, if it's at a school, maybe at that school. But really get to know their side as well in terms of where they conduct their business. When you recruit, again, you want to do your best to align with your program's mission, vision, and goals. And also, revisit, do they need to be rewritten? Are they a little outdated? Do they need to be revisited or edited? Focusing on the why. So again, if consider your students, your recruits, your institutional partners, organizations. You want to think really long-term and from a sustainability aspect, not just in the here and now. You want to try and have clarity and transparency of your why and also understand that of your partnering organizations. Allow, again, all the materials, visuals, and presentations, speakers, and events to reflect your why. Your holistic recruitment will also reflect this. And then identify what are the needs of the different participants in their different stages of their application journey. And remember, some of them don't know they're applying yet. Things that may help those that are ready to apply or are considering a profession, a healthcare profession, are pre-PA awareness conferences, as well as field trips to different PA programs, mock interviews to get them ready for the interview process, NHSC or financial aid information dissemination events, application and personal statement reviews, Perhaps they need help with PA shadowing and mentoring opportunities, as well as volunteer experiences or community service. In terms of partnerships, this is where a lot of the magic does happen. At our institution, our pipeline program actually took a really great spark from an existing program. We partnered together and we were able to gain more participants, and they were able to also not only gain more participants, but gain PAs to come and be speakers at their pipeline program. It is about give and give and win and win. And so it's really about working together to accomplish a common goal. Co-sponsoring and co-hosting events does help. If you haven't thought about before, maybe consider a +1 buddy system where you invite a new organization to join you at different events and you accompany them as well. So a lot of these partnerships are very strategic and some are not. Some are just kind of like cold calls and see if anything comes of it. These can partnerships can be developed through your curriculum. Those of you that are involved in existing courses that offer community service learning, community diagnosis projects, or some kind of experiential learning, you can start with those organizations. They already exist and they serve a diverse group of individuals, whether it be homeless youth, foster youth, LGBTQ youth. Partner with programs or institutions, again, that are going to share a lot of your visions and what you both hope to accomplish, and also that can maybe share resources and strengths with you. Next, when we talk about recruitment, we're not only talking about recruitment into the diversity pool of applicants, we're also thinking about, as you develop your diversity building mechanism in-house, are there any colleagues you do or probably can identify some folks that are interested in the same goals? And so you will probably need support from administration and leadership. Also, when you recruit, you want to think about students. So students do help run the day-to-day activities and a lot of the events around diversity building mechanisms. So you want to see if any of them are available to help with volunteer work, event planning. This also helps expose them early on to working with marginalized communities. And they do also offer feedback to help inform the process. In terms of current teams, there are some people that are early adopters, and so they are already champions and they are ready to join whatever you have cooking in terms of building diversity at your programs and the diversity pool of applicants. A lot of people maybe have a heart or a lived experience, and some people are motivated by accreditation. So just be out there recruiting on all levels as well. So here's an example of what our healthcare pipeline does look like. So as you're building, what does all of this look like? So you can have the beginning connecting with the community, as Daryl mentioned earlier, is very important. You get buy-in from the parents and the local organizations, and word does spread. And then, you maybe make some visits into the elementary, middle, high schools. We've listed some of our partners. And so it's just to give you an example of, some are magnet schools, some are learning centers, some are, traditional schools as we know them. Some have an emphasis on STEM and STEAM, so they might be very interested in collaborating and partnering with you. And then, you can focus on different aspects of a pipeline. So it can include just exposing early to health careers. So, and we don't just, at our institution, we don't just focus on exposing our guests to the PA profession. We expose them to a wide array of other healthcare careers, such as PT and OT, dentistry, pharm. And then we also learn to not limit ourselves. We also focus on the technical aspects of those careers and the technical careers there. We also have students who want to continue on and go to college. So we develop a college prep program. We also have noticed that a lot of students aren't always ready to jump right into applying for, say, like medical school or a PA school. So we have a college vocational training branch as well. And that can serve for exposures to different health careers. And later down the road, they decide that they do want to come back and join the PA profession. And then some students, like we mentioned, are already ready to go pre-PA. So what are their needs and who can we connect them with to continue to get the exposure they need to strengthen their application? And then once in graduate school, so once in, whether it's different like physical therapy schools or OT school or PA school, this is where our students in graduate school all can work together and continue to attend events hosted by some of these other graduate schools. And maybe, a young mind who hasn't yet decided what health career they want to pursue, and you happen to be a speaker at that event, or is now interested in maybe coming over and applying to your program. And then at the end of our pipeline, we want everyone to enter a healthcare career. And that doesn't always mean they're going to choose PA. We hope they will. But this is definitely a way to diversify the applicant pool beyond PA school.
So the section that I'm going to go over now is holistic admissions and the approach that we take at the University of Southern California. And as you notice here, what I have right under holistic admissions is really getting to know the person behind the application. So when they apply, as we all know, they'll go through the CASPA system, and then what you want to make sure is you have a file, and then what I'm going to go through is just the mechanics part of it. We have to make sure that our students qualify, meet our minimum requirements. And that's so that we have a student who's going to be potentially successful in the program. We want to make sure that they can be academically successful, that they put in the time as far as the clinical experience, the volunteer work, right? As far as the type of student we're looking for. Now, one of the things in our program that I'm very, very proud of, here is the mission of when I actually started the program. If you look here on the screen, as far as what our mission is, keywords that I highlighted are medically underserved, diverse backgrounds. So the program is committed to preparing students from diverse backgrounds. Emphasis is placed on understanding and appreciating diversity. And then lastly, interprofessional team. As you know, in PA, there's an interprofessional team, a team of clinicians who work together to try to provide care for our patients. So that was the original mission. And as time went by, we went back, and this does not happen overnight. This happened over the last few years. We wanted to make sure that our mission captured what we do at USC. Primary care at USC is dedicated to advancement of PAs, education, emphasis services. Again, the word is medically underserved. So I went really quick, but I wanted to point out the word medically underserved. And the next bullet there goes over again. We kept diverse backgrounds to address what? Health disparities, because that's what we want our students to go out there and address the needs of the community. And lastly, again, you see the word community, but we have partnership with our community. We have collaboration, we have inclusivity, we have innovation. So we always try to make sure we provide the approach, the latest and greatest, so that we can work with our community, integrity and excellence. We want to make sure we provide excellent education as well as excellent care. So a little bit of our program. Our program here at USC, an overview in the last 9 years, who are we? Since 2014 to today, our class size has gone up from 53 all the way up to 60. And as you know, that may not sound like a big number, but getting an additional 7 students in the classroom does make a difference. So now, what does our classroom look like? We have an average age of 27, between 24 and 27 years of age is what we've seen in the last 7 years. What's the makeup of our class? Well, at USC in 22, we basically call the class according to the year they're going to graduate, right? So this is a class of 22 who are now considered second years, and they're made up of 82% females, 18% males. And if you look back to 14, the numbers were not that far off, 77 female, 23% male. And then currently, we still have a good size, we have 11 male students today that started in the fall. On an average, we bring in about 1 or 2 veterans per year. What we're trying to show here is I'm trying to show our holistic approach. So what I'm trying to set as a stage to show you, what our class is made up of, who our cohort is, and then here, our students are academically solid. One thing that you would need to understand is that when students start PA school, we want to make sure we don't set them up for a fall and they come in with the academic background that they need to be able to pass that didactic portion of the program, which is actually, as you know, very rigorous, and then get them into clinic. We know most of these students are great clinicians, but they also have to be able to do the science. They have to do the medicine courses. They have to do the clinical courses, right? So they have to be prepared. So here, this slide will show you that they are academically solid. What about disadvantaged status? Do we compromise disadvantaged status to get our kids who are academically solid? Look at our numbers here. Our numbers here today show that we had in the 22 or the year 22 class, which is our second years, we have 62% of our class who are minorities. In comparison to 21, which was 33%, almost a double increase in minorities disadvantaged status. And as you go down the numbers, disadvantage also increased, education also increased. So all our numbers, as far as are we getting into students who are underserved, who are diversity, we are, our numbers show it. So now, this is where I finish off, and I want to finish off with addressing this. How do we approach the actual applicant? Yes, you get the package, I've shown you all the stats, but you have to treat everyone as an individual. You need to go in there and you need to read the application. And then you get people who say, well, that sounds like a lot of work. Well, you know what? It is a lot of work and it's worth it, because then you put the time to get these students who actually will represent the community they're serving. And not only that, you start to get diversity as far as, you know, what your goal is to bring up diversity in the classroom. Don't just look at the numbers. Don't just look at the GPA, right? You want to make sure you look at the application and you go to our mission, as you see here right in front of you, medically underserved, diverse backgrounds. Are these students who have shown that they've been putting basically time into working into areas who have health disparities, right? Are they working in the community? Are they willing to get out there? And when they graduate, hopefully the whole point here, because we are what we call a primary care program, that they're gonna go out there and wanna provide primary care in these underserved communities. So the big thing is the entire program has gotta be able to buy into, let's look at the individual, let's see who they are as a person. Let's not just look at their GPA, let's not look at their GRE. Some schools still use that, right? Let's not look at their, you know, all their different scores. You have to look at the person as an individual and really read their application. You know, a lot of personal statements start sounding the same, but if you look at their personal background, their history, their where they put in their hours as far as clinic, as far as their volunteer hours, that starts to build a description of your student. And that's when you look at your actual mission, like I do, is you start to see this is the kind of student that I want here. So anyways, this is an actual way of what we do here at USC is as far as a holistic approach. And you see our numbers speak for it as far as what you've seen. Thank you.
Dr. Vallejo, thank you for giving us a concrete view of the holistic approach and considering more than the numbers. Like being primary care oriented, building longevity, investing in long-lasting relationships with patients, similarly is how we build a diversity building mechanism. From the beginning, we have the goal of longevity in mind and start to invite and recruit from kindergarten. This is an opportunity to foster a long-lasting relationship. Imagine kinder to college and eventually a PA student in your institution. The process will take time. Let's move forward with patience and a steady pace. May we joyfully anticipate the fruits of our intentions. The ARC-PA diversity standard and your intentional efforts to increase the diversity in the PA applicant pool will change the future of the PA profession, the patients we serve, and humanity. At this time, we'd like to acknowledge some people have made this all possible for today, sharing this with you, and also for the work that we continue to do. This is by no means an exhaustive list of those who made this presentation and diversity building mechanism possible at our institution. Our sincerest gratitude and appreciation for your continued support. Thank you for attending, and we can move to questions, comments, and discussions at this time.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon, good evening, maybe even good morning. I don't know if anyone's joining from another side of the world. Thank you so much for joining us and taking the time to be with us to view our webinar video. We would like to open up the chat box as well as the Zoom room for questions, comments, discussion, any additions, or even anything that you have noticed has worked for you in your diversity building strategies around recruitment and outreach and admissions. We'll start with Dr. Lee.
Just wanted to thank all of you for such a comprehensive and inspiring presentation. You know, a lot of us that work in the field of diversity, I think sometimes our biggest struggle is sustainability. So do you have advice? I was really struck by Mr. Mayo's, thought of old school connections, because I think that way too. And so how do you, once you build those community partnerships, institutional stakeholders, how do you sustain those partnerships and especially the funding that goes into creating, such a successful program that you have?
Thank you, Dr. Lee.
Well, I would say first and foremost, it's really important to have follow-up. It's one thing to go out and recruit, and put out the spill, put out the message, hey, we're here, this is what we offer, and then you just drop it at that. I think it's so important to have follow-up. And a large part of our follow-up is the continuing program that we have. We have students that attend workshops on a regular basis. They come out on Saturdays and they attend workshops, they attend events. And this is not just the pre-PA branch of our pipeline, but it's also the crew lead, which is the high schooler and middle school age students, as well as the K through 12 students. So, or should I say K through 16? Anyway, elementary school age kids. They also come out on a regular basis. So again, the continual connect with advising, mentorship, and again, overall follow-up is key, I think, to preservation of what our program has been.
Can I chime in? I'm Robert Lane from the University of Massachusetts Medical School in Worcester, Mass, Central Mass, the heart of the Commonwealth. We've been running a pipeline program for now going on 26 years. We have middle school, elementary school, high school students, summer science camps, after school programs for high school students, all run by the medical students as visiting scientists, tutors, and mentors. We have a number of students who've gone through our programs who are now practicing physicians or in our medical school. And I think to answer your question, we have buy-in from people at the top. They put the dollars in and make sure that our program continues. We have a partnership with the Worcester Public Schools North Quadrant, which includes 7 elementary schools, a middle school, and 2 high schools. Both of those high schools have allied health programs, a vet program, and a biotech program in those schools. All those students get to come on campus when they're seniors to do a internship in a clinical or research area. And then we have other collaborations with Mass Life Science Center for students who are interested in biomedical research. So they get to come on campus during the summer. And then we have summer programs, our boot camp to medical school, summer enrichment program for 35 college students who are interested in medical school. We have a high school health careers program for students who are think they're interested in medicine. And then we also have a 10-week research program funded by NIH. So prior to COVID, all those students were on campus. They're all residential programs. So the institution comes up with the money to house them at a college, Worcester State University campus. So, and the university has put money into this. So to answer your question, they bought into this years ago. It was originally funded by Robert Wood Johnson Foundation for the first 5 years back in '96. And when that 5-year ended, all the partners decided to double their commitment to keep things going. And so I tuned in because I wanted to see what other parts of the country were doing to also promote these initiatives to promote diversity. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lane. And so glad that you are here. Hearing from you is very inspirational. I believe I heard you say 26 years doing this work. And
some of our former students are currently back at UMass as physicians and are on the admissions committee. So.
Nice. That's very inspirational. Robert Wood Johnson, I remember I was a participant in a Robert Wood Johnson summer program over in Houston at Rice University back in like 97, 98. Okay. And yeah, we did the summer and I met a lot of students from across the country. And I think there was just a lot of community for us to be able to come together. So I can just imagine how lively your campus must be.
Yeah, we were one of the in the first 6 rounds of what they called hippies back then, health professional partnership initiatives.
Thank you. We have on sustainability, Mr. Howard, I saw your hand go up. Would you like to chime in?
Thank you, Madam Director. I'm going to ask an old man question. Can you hear me? We're good. I wanted to go back to what Dr. Lee said, and Brother Lane, we're probably the same hippie group because I'm an H-copper from the 80s. And
okay.
Dr. Lee, one of the things that I've noticed, California is very fortunate. We do have state funding that are set for these type of initiatives for family practice residency, physician assistant, and nurse practitioner. And over the course of the Song Brown, as in Willie Brown legislation, those funds have increased the numbers and have been part of the sustainability of the US CPA program. I am an HCOP product from 1986. Janice was my mentor, and I became an HCOP project investigator. I still believe in HCOP, but what's happening now is we're going to have to do it. You know how they used to talk about schools getting together? Now we have to look at regions. So when you talk about the Western region sitting down and approaching these funding like the California Endowment or places like that, you have to hit them up with, we got 9 states here that probably comprised of 12 medical schools, then we can increase the diversity. Where is our $27 million to do it? And I know this can be done because in Orange County, and I believe I saw people from Orange County on this, there has been private funding at one of the PA programs down there to the tune of millions. So I think if we can get together, and NAMME is the perfect place to do something like this because you already have the regions set up. NAMME would be able to weigh Health and Human Services funds or whatever it's called now, whatever buzzword, and say we want to take an approach to state block grants going to regions for these efforts and go for a bigger pot of the pie. I'm thoroughly convinced with the current administration, we are getting ready to see a fat cycle. For some of those old grant writers, you know what that means. And that's 2 bits from the old guy. And the other thing I wanted to add, I am so old, my brother. I am the second PA that was liaison to NAMME when it was called the Association of PA Programs. So I've been around a long time. And it's good to be back, and I'm really proud of what everyone's doing at SC, and I'm really proud to see that NAMME is moving forward. So I'm just gonna kick back now because I'm a hippie.
Thank you, Jedi Howard, as I like to call him. And next, I think we had Robin. And Robin, were you raising your hand for the sustainability question, or did you have a different question?
No, it was more of a comment.
Okay.
Hello, everyone. It was more of a comment in terms of that was where I was recruited. My name is Robin Ramey, and I am a pre-PA student. And I was actually introduced to the profession at a church where I was invited by Mr. Mayo and Mr. Howard. So that has been like a great thing. And I do believe that where you go to the communities of where you're looking for, as we say, folk, you will find them. And I have been a part of the program. I'm a part of the pipeline, and I'm the living witness that it works. It definitely works.
Thank you, Robin. And special shout out, I saw your children there.
Yes, I was quite surprised. I had to call them in. Those were my students. I mean, those were my children doing the suture course on the pig's feet some years back when I first became part of the program. And so they have actually grown up with the understanding of PA and what a PA does and an interest in science because of the program. So pay it forward.
Thank you, Robin. And I think we had one more comment, Dr. Vallejo.
Hi, everyone. Welcome. I just wanted to comment on the sustainability question, only because I know that it's always a question you ask, because as you know, pipeline programs and these kind of programs are always what we consider soft money or non-guaranteed money. So I one of the biggest things and that I've always thought about in running these programs with Ms. Maldonado, Mr. Mayo, Ms. Trammell, Ms. Hudson, and all the other, Les, everybody, all the wonderful volunteers, is that what we did in our pipeline program is we recruited volunteers from our own PA program, and they come in and they run the whole entire thing on a volunteer basis. And what we do is we provide, or the program provides the facility. So that's how we do it as far as sustainability. Now, whenever we get a grant, which we wish we always had millions of dollars in grants, which they're not always guaranteed, is it just gives it that extra, that, what do we call it, the butter or the cream or whatever, the jelly, whatever, right? But we always make sure that we run our programs every single year, because our PA students, our first years, are the ones that have time to do this. I don't know how they do it, because it's one of the hardest years in PA school, but they always volunteer and they'll come in the first year and they'll run. And what we do as faculty is we kind of step back and we say, okay, you're driving. When you need our helps, when we got our connections, we'll help you. But for the most part, what we've seen is it's a very, and I don't want to say this because I don't want to give a bad, bad image that we don't need money, because we need money. We always do to run these programs. No, what I'm saying is that when it gets to the point we don't have money, we can still run these programs. And you do have to have buy-in, but what we want to get is we want to get hard money, not soft money, because then once you have hard money, then it's like, it's not an issue. Then you're saying, you always get the question is, well, how is your faculty doing and not to burn out? Well, now we're getting paid for the programs. That's what I mean by the hard money. Now we're getting the monies into the program. Now we don't have to worry about applying for grants. So that is really the big thing, the next big step. Let's get our institutions to buy in and make it a part of the curriculum. That's how it's going to be. But right now, the way we do it is, let's get our volunteers, PA students, especially with our mission, they love to volunteer, they run the program. And a lot of the time we sit there and go, okay, it's your program, you do it. So as far as the sustainability, we don't worry too much, other than, we would like to have the extras, which would be nice. Some years we have, lunches, other years we have snacks. It just depends. But the whole point is that we're trying to get that program, the word out there, and make it a program that's going to last forever and get better and better. So that's just all I wanted to add from my experiences working here with the PA program.
And talking about food, that reminded me that some years we've had donations from supermarkets, grocery stores, and our parent, family, guardian, volunteer group that's part of Pipeline was preparing sandwiches in the kitchen. They're just, laying the food out that was donated. And so we just, finding a way to sustain is, speaking of how to sustain is, we really come together as community and really try to, use all our resources to do, double work sometimes, but work that is, people just volunteer to do this. And I think part of what has been helpful in the sustainability aspect is we have a project assistant. And when we speak about grant funding, what do we do with the money to really build that sustainability and kind of like central headquarters, so to speak? Students move around, they come and go, and they have other priorities. Faculty and staff as well have, teaching priorities. And other things that maybe cause them to move around a little more. But having someone stable at the center has been very helpful. And this individual also comes from a background of doing a lot of community programming, so is well connected and uses the same network connections from other projects to connect with ours, and just kind of has this fluency of being able to check in through a mass email maybe once a month to see how all our community partners are doing. During the summer, we also, not this summer, but other summer, not this past summer because of the COVID limitations, but past summers, we tend to host a community partners luncheon. So we invite all of our community partners, whether from day one to just yesterday. This is counselors, school, within our school, outside in the community. It could be teachers, it could be other stakeholders. We invite them and we just kind of talk again about renewing our vows, so to speak. This is what we've been doing. We still, need help and support in these areas. Can we count on you? What are some collaboration opportunities? And so we find that just even touching base regularly and not forgetting who our partners are really goes a really long way. And I wanted to also not ignore the fact that the financial aspect of sustainability is very important. And so I'd like to see if Dr. Lil-Henry can maybe offer some insight there.
Yeah, hi, good afternoon, good evening, good morning. It's nice to see everybody. I would say that as Les Howard shared earlier, we're very fortunate that California has really committed dollars to this effort. And yet, from an administrative perspective, it really only takes us about 5 days out of our year to apply for and defend grants related to the state funding. And that is a very small price to pay to be able to fund the argument for excellence. And I think to Mr. Lane's perspective, I fully, wholeheartedly agree that institutions that want to be competitive, that want to attract excellence, need to invest in this work, because that is the best way to really walk the walk. And we're starting to see that. There's very little that's been good that's come out of this last year. But one of the things I'll say from an administrative perspective is institutions really seem to be committed to putting the money into these efforts to really change our culture, change our surroundings as a community. And that, I think, is going to benefit us tremendously. And then, as many of us know who've written the federal grants, that's a little bit more of a commitment. It's about a 30-day writing period, but again, well worth our efforts. And if I can just put in a plug for advocacy as well, as Mr. Howard said, now is a great time to be in front of people in Congress advocating for money related to HCOP and things like that, so that we can really take off with this work, because it is so incredibly important to our outcomes as a society. So thank you.
And one more thing to add regarding, I guess we'll call human capital sustainability aspect. In my prior life, before becoming a PA, I was a high school teacher in the community. So I just went back home and I invited, just teachers and people from the community. I was in a session this morning, and something that I hadn't heard in a while or thought about just kind of rang true was sometimes we have, we want to go in and serve underserved or under-resourced communities and offer an invitation to pipeline programs. But sometimes, we need to this is where it's important to partner with someone from the community or from the neighborhood or from the area. So it's sometimes very important is like who's going in and how we're supporting those efforts and learning as well. And so I think having taught in the area and grown up in some of the neighborhoods that we're serving has probably also helped us in developing our pipeline program and the sustainability of it. Any other questions? Yes, Dr. Gregory Bass. I believe you're muted.
Yes.
There we go.
I was going to say, thank you, everyone. This has been such an informative conversation that we're having this evening. I know at Spelman, we have started the SPA group, the Spelman Physician Assistant Association, actually have our president, Sarah Wiggins, and one of our members, Journey Simpson, who is joining us this evening. And I thank them so much for coming, because one of the things we've been discussing at NAMME is how do we engage the next generation of individuals who are passionate about diversity, equity and inclusion, to make sure, as Dr. Lane mentioned, that there will be individuals at the table being able to assist in these efforts, and guiding some of the admissions practices that are ongoing. And so for a young group who is on fire about becoming physician assistants, I would love to hear from the panel about what are things that they can do, not only to make sure that their organization is continuing to thrive. They've been inviting physician assistants and also thinking about ways to inform other students about having a competitive application. But what are things that they can do even at the national level? Are there organizations that they can join, or other conversations that will continue to equip them with the knowledge and skills necessary to become advocates for the profession, both as PA students, but even beyond?
Thank you, Dr. Bass. Right now I'm thinking maybe Dr. Vallejo and Ms. Hudson, Mr. Mayo, Mr. Mel may be able to help, Mr. Howard as well, being that they head the pre-PA branch of Pipeline. And also we all have worked on the admissions selections team. Mr. Howard.
The easiest way to do it, and I'm finding it's very effective, is social media. There is currently a Facebook group called PAs of Color that are doing exactly what you're looking for. So direct your students to that group and they get tied in, and that increases their network tenfold. Just a thought.
Thank you very much.
And if I can add to that, as far as information, being part of the admissions, what we call selections in our program, I think I'm not muted, right? While we were talking, I'm thinking, have I been talking for a couple minutes and nobody can hear me? I do that all the time. One of the things that I've come to realize that no matter how many years I've been part of admissions, that you always get these students who they'll just go to the website, read what's there, and they'll do the requirements, and they won't even do anything else and they'll apply. Have your students contact the schools they're interested in applying, meet with the admissions counselors, get the information from the, what do they say, from the mouth of the program, right? Because that's the way to really find out, am I doing this right? Because there are so many application students who are like, oh, if they just would have called us, we could have guided them better. Or, I mean, we can't call everybody because there's, as you know, there's so many applications out there. But even when you've gone through the cycle the first time, okay, what do I need to do? You know, I did all the minimum requirements, but maybe I need to call the university that I'm applying to, right? And then find out. So one of the things that I have found of our applicants is that the ones who don't get in the first time or the second time, they're just not following up. They're not doing that next step, that what is it that I need to do to get into that program? And that's, you know, that's like the next thing. It's like, okay, so like when you go for a job interview, you don't not read anything about the company you're applying to, right? You just don't just walk in there. It's the same thing with PA school, right? Do your research, do your homework. So if there's anything I can give as far as advice for all our programs as they're advising their students, is advise your students, tell them to come. I know you're in pre-PA programs, but you're not going to really know what it takes to get into a program until you contact that program. And that from my experiences, most programs are very open to giving information. Yeah, sure. You know, especially now with Zoom all over the place, we'll set up an appointment and I can tell you what we expect of our students. I'll go over your application, you know, things like that. So if I can give someone advice, a student, I would say, contact the program you're interested in, you know, and go from that. And then just kind of, you know, from that build. So.
Thank you, Dr. Vallejo. Ms. Hudson.
Hi, thank you. I wanted to add to the question. Two words resonate with me. One being relationship.
And then the second being inquisitive. And so ideally that the students who are interested in becoming a physician assistant would have some type of relationship with a physician assistant. So you can hear directly information and learn of the personal experiences that happen. Of course, every experience is different. And so having a relationship with more than one would be ideal, because my relationship or my experience could be lovely, but someone else's has a different journey. And then two, be inquisitive. So seek out information. Every state has a physician assistant representative or government governing body, if you will, and they have student branches. And so that's an official opportunity to have an entry into the profession, so that you can learn more about what you can just readily hear from someone, and then learn about the laws and the regulations that make the PA profession what it is and so appealing.
We have a group of students who work with the admissions office. We call them student ambassadors. They're usually second and third year students. So when they contact the admissions office, admissions office will put them in touch with a group of students, and they'll hear firsthand current student to incoming student on what they really need to do. Sometimes it's easier hearing that information from somebody who's closer in line to what you want to do than hearing it from us guys who've been around forever.
The power of peer-to-peer. I hear you. Thank you, Mr. Lane. Ms. Trammell.
Yeah, thinking about recruitment, but more on a broader level, is to use an untapped resource, in my opinion, which is the alumni associations at your different institutions, because the alumni understand the rigors of college, and they frequently can encourage their children or their grandchildren, I'm a grandparent, to pursue a career in health careers, and they can help provide the guidance that is needed. And also they have the time and interest in providing support for some of your initiatives with your pipeline programs. And also for the PAs of color, this is a group, and I'm getting this information from Ms. Hudson. This is a group that was started by very energetic, innovative PA students. And they've developed a nonprofit organization and have really developed a very sophisticated way of recruiting not only students, but also they're dipping into developing programs that will enable programs to recruit faculty. So minority faculty can breed minority students, because as I mentioned in my presentation, if I can't see me, then I'm not going to apply. So it's really important in your marketing materials to make sure that you're inclusive in how you present the different programs that you have. But definitely networking with the alumni associations all across the specialties, I think, is an untapped resource.
Thank you, Mr. Mel.
Dr. Bass, we have a question in the chat for you. What does SPA stand for?
I was going to put Sarah on the spot. Sarah, you want to introduce your organization?
Hi, yes. So we're the Spelman Pre-PA Association. So first you just say SPA or SPPAA. And thank you all for the great advice.
Thank you. I believe we have time for a couple more questions before we conclude our session this afternoon, morning, evening.
So please feel free to maybe share in the chat box if you have some thoughts or comments or questions, or use the raise hand feature. Dr. Lohenry.
Yeah, I just want to be really encouraging to everybody because we started out 7-8 years ago really slow. And we just, Maria and the team just got really good at what they were doing on those Saturdays and really got some excitement building up. And over time, it grew and grew and grew and grew. And the reality is everything that you heard today, the concept of the relational aspects of this are critically important. And you have to build trust in all these communities and show consistent sustainability and commitment to the work. And so, again, 7+ years later, we're now seeing well over 100 people attend our Saturday sessions via Zoom this last year in the midst of a pandemic. And that just shows how important that kind of consistency is. And the other thing is, I'm as an administrator, I'm reminded frequently of the literature and the talk of the minority tax. And I think it's really critically important to just put that out there, that it is, this is not something that should be just done by your faculty and students of color, but it should be a commitment from, as Robert said, from the top down. And it's the benefits far outweigh the challenges, and the excitement when you see those students now become part of your PA program or your medical school or your nursing program are just beyond description. So I just, it may seem daunting for programs that haven't started yet, but I can assure you that it's not as bad as it seems, and really the rewards are plenty.
Yeah, I think if I may add to some of that is just starting small. We have at our team, we get these big ideas, or I remember just sitting after defending a grant with Mr. Howard, reflecting on the day and just getting really excited about what the future can hold, what the 5-year plan and 10-year plan would look like. And it's just like, like creating our own version of a Disneyland with pipeline work. And, just being surrounded with our team that's also inclusive of people who can ground some of us dreamers, and to just remind us to go smaller, maybe start with a pilot group, something more manageable, think it through, but then also just go for it. You got to let it out of the gates at some point. So, you can only prepare so much, but once you try your first attempt, if you haven't done this before, whatever it is you're doing, really, it will inform the process that much sooner, and lessons will be learned that much sooner as well, hopefully. Dr. Lee.
Just wanted to ask, with COVID-19, the pandemic, what has been the biggest challenge and your greatest opportunity, given where we're at now?
Team. Dr. V, Dr. Vallejo.
I'm going to chime in because we just had a pipeline event this past weekend. We've been getting up in the hundreds as students come into our Zoom pipelines. And I think it's because at first it was a little hard because it was the beginning of COVID. And then when the word got out, because we continued our connections with the teachers and the schools, now we're getting over 100 participants in our pipeline program once a month, and the pre-PA program is just thriving. It's I guess like you said, what do we the advantage we're taking is that because it's online, we get those students who can't attend in person, so that's a big advantage. Disadvantage is obviously the personal touch that's not there, but we do spend a lot of time with them in those Zoom rooms. We're doing Kahoots, we're doing so many things. The students are loving it. This past month, we had nursing, and they had 1 million questions. Speakers will volunteer a little easier because they don't have to come in person. So it's been very successful right now. Obviously, we can't wait to see them again in person, but we're thinking of maybe having a hybrid in the future where we can get those students who can't come in, plus also those who can come in, and just continue reaching out to the communities, the local ones versus also the non-local ones who can come out. So it's been great success for us.
Thank you. Mr. Howard.
I'm not gonna lie, Zoom is wearing this old man out. And it's really nice to sit down with students and do the type of counseling that we could do with the face-to-face, because I tend to be very expressive. That's the best I can say.
Thank you, Mr. Howard. And Mr. Mayo.
I was just going to add to what has been said is the fact that Zoom has been great, and I actually like it. But unfortunately, when you're talking about, trying to recruit individuals from underserved areas of the community, obviously the challenges tend to present itself in the area of technology. And so a lot of individuals can't afford, the high-tech equipment, the computers, the laptops and whatever. And so I've noticed that has been somewhat of a challenge since the crisis has begun. Other than that, I guess it will be typical anyway, regardless as to whether or not we're in a crisis. When you don't have the parental support, that's one issue. And so, again, it's compounded when you don't have it in the midst of still being at home and still having these technological challenges. And again, lack of support from the parental perspective. It's so frustrating. So that's one big area.
Thank you, Mr. Mayo. And Dr. Lee, one thing that came to mind was one adjustment we had to make for our pipeline program is the sharing of devices could be a problem, or sharing of the Wi-Fi in the home on, we have our events on Saturdays, and there might be multiple family members participating, like maybe a parent guardian and maybe like a middle school student and a high school student all in the same home. So what we did is we staggered. So instead of being all on one Saturday, we may stagger the times of two different events, or we may stagger the SAT. So it'll be like maybe this Saturday we have a parent event or guardian event, and then the next Saturday would be, the middle school event, for example. So we've adapted as best as we could, and we've just tried to persist so that we could find a way to work it out. And sometimes, we've had to, with our parent group, we have just reached out one-on-one on the phone before the day of the event to see how we can troubleshoot or help, and see if we can log them on, even if it's just them dialing on their phone and then putting their phone on the side. And we may never see their image, but they're able to hear us and we can communicate with them. So some challenges for sure. And then, we just kind of put our heads together and try to make it work. All right. I believe this concludes our time today, but definitely reach out to us if you would like to continue the conversation, maybe partner with us, maybe pick our brain, or if we are allowed to pick yours, we would be happy to connect. If not today, definitely in the near future. And any comments from the team before we hand it back over to Dr. Lee?
I'll just say thank you to NAMME and NAMME leadership for doing this. I think the PA profession is very serious about this issue of diversity, equity, and inclusion, and we welcome your partnership. I don't speak on behalf of PAEA, but I'm speaking on behalf of the PAs. We think it's a phenomenal profession that provides a great living for communities and families, and really the data shows that PAs are really happy, as you can clearly tell from us today. So, so we look forward to seeing more opportunities to get partnerships with y'all. Thank you.
Thank you so much to all our esteemed colleagues, panelists from the Primary Care Physician Assistant Program at the Keck School of Medicine, USC. I personally was so inspired, and not only by the presentation, but also by our attendees who shared, their lived experiences. It's really inspiring to see how historically you folks have grown with Jedi Howard starting off and continuing to expand with Dr. Lohenry and others in leadership. I can tell it's just an amazing team that you've put together. And so on behalf of the Western region and all of NAMME, also want to thank Madam President, Dr. Rosalind Gregory Bass, and our Executive Director, Ms. Felicia Keenan, for all their support to make this session possible. So thank you all for being here this evening. I look forward to more Ask NAMME sessions and hopefully collaborations in the future. Aloha.
Good night, everyone. Thank you so much. We appreciate all of you.